everyone, this is Tara Lynn. I am the artist behind Paint, Rinse, Repeat, and welcome to Couple at Sunset. If you are here with me, you got this supply list that we go over before we get started. And if you have that, you found the link. I'm just going to update this because I noticed that it doesn't say Couple at Sunset. So anyway, before we get started, I just want to mention the recording for this, the audio for this might be a little different than you're used to. I realized about 3/4 the way through my live, it did not record any of the audio. So I am re-recording over the top. So it may feel a little funny or be a little more brief with a little less chatter. That might be a good thing if you don't like to hear me chatter. Anyway, so that happened and we're going to go from there. But you got the supply list, you got a tracer, and what we're going to do is get that image transferred onto our canvas. And if you don't have the tracer, this one is fairly simple to draw. You just need a sun for the sunset. You need a nice straight horizon line. The ocean is just crashing in with waves, so you just need kind of a wavy ocean line there. And then as far as the outline of the people go, again, that's why you have a transfer, but if you have difficulty with that, it's really just a flat line and then almost a boot shape. And then I put legs on it, and then I add in the people's heads and their legs sticking out. So just break down those shapes if you need to. And that is the tracer. All right, let's go over our color list before we start. We are going to have magenta. We are going to have a nice bright yellow. We're going to have cerulean blue, which is just a nice medium shade of blue. If you don't have that color, you can mix a deeper blue with a white. White and black. And crimson, which is a nice bright orangey red. And optional colors are going to be violet and orange. If you don't want to mix those yourself, you can grab a bottle of pre-mixed color. We are working with acrylic paint, so you're going to need water, paper towels, a palette or plate to put your paint on, paint brushes in various sizes. I most often use small, medium, and large rounds and flats. But you can use whatever paint brushes are easiest for you. I also recommend a heat gun or hair dryer that can speed along the drying process. It's just handy, but definitely not required. So those are the supplies. All right, for step 1, you are going to need your cerulean blue and your white on your palette. And once you get those colors ready, what we're going to do is we're going to grab a flat brush and we're going to add white along the bottom of the horizon line going upwards. And then we're going to add the cerulean blue or the bright blue at the top going downwards. And we're just going to blend those two together to get a nice gradient. And after you do that, you can blend as much as you want to. You can add in variations of color. Remember, the sky is rarely a perfect gradient. There's lots of variation. There's lots of streaks and lines and beautiful colors in the sky. We are going to layer on top of this. So right now we're just worried about getting that blue and the white in the top of the sky. And when you finish that, we'll move on to step 2. Alright, for the next steps, I'm going to go ahead and get all of the rest of my colors onto my color palette there. So yellow and magenta and the crimson, and we can mix some violet, or you can put some violet on your palette, and orange. And then we've got white and black already. Well, I've got white out. Later we'll add some black. And I'm going to go ahead and get all these colors onto my palette. And the next step, what we're going to do is I'm going to use a flat brush, and I'm just going to add some bright yellow to paint the water right below the sun's in the horizon line. So what we're going to do is we are going to put the chrome yellow right underneath the sun, and we are going to blend that into red. And then we are going to, in between the red and the yellow, we're going to encourage that to blend with a little bit of orange. So that's the first part of the next step. We're going to add yellow, and then we're going to fill in the surrounding area with red, and we're going to blend that yellow into the red slightly. Next, we're going to blend and make a little purple. We can do that by mixing cobalt blue with a little bit of our nice bright red there, our crimson, and that will make a nice purple shade. And we're going to add some purple onto the edges of our ocean. So along the left and the right sides, we are going to add some purple. We're going to come down next to the two people sitting down. And all through the front, we're just going to brush in some purple. Again, we're using horizontal brush strokes, and we can fill in the area all the way up to where the waves meet the shore. So we're just going to add in a layer of purple. And this is where you can mix your own, or you can use a pre-mixed purple. Either way is perfectly fine. Next, I'm going to blend in little hints of magenta, and I'm mostly just blending that a little bit where the purple meets the red, and the top right, and a little bit kind of where the purple meets the red on the left side as well. And that just encourages some blending. It changes the shade of that nice bright crimson. It adds a little bit of magenta in there and just gives a little variation. So just blending in some magenta. Just to make things a little brighter in the ocean where the sunshine is, I'm going to go over with another little bit of yellow and just really brighten that up. All right, for the next step, I'm going to use a nice flat brush and get some white paint. My sky has already pretty much dried, and so I want to re-wet the sky and add a nice layer of white. About, depending on the size of your canvas, we're thinking maybe about a quarter of the top of that sky. So just want to swoop in a nice white strip. You can blend that upward until your brush dries off a little bit. Just blending that into the blue. And then what we're going to do is blend in small amounts of our yellow along the edges. And start with a nice dry brush when you get to the yellow. Dip in yellow and then offload some of that yellow so there's very little paint on your brush. You can always add more if needed, but it's hard to remove the paint once you put it on. So add a little yellow onto your brush and then not very much, and we're just going to blend some in. I want it to be nice and heavy on the left hand side, but I'll have a little yellow on the right hand side as well. And then with the same technique, we're going to do the same thing with a little bit of our red as well. It's just add a little bit of red highlights in that sunshine. In the next step, I'm just going to pull a little bit of that yellow sunshine out into the water with some nice horizontal strokes. The next step can feel slightly intimidating. We are going to add some clouds. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some of my red paint, my bright crimson paint to my brush, and I'm going to offload that paint a little bit by wiping it onto the paper towel. And I'm just going to lightly tap where I want the larger part of my clouds to be. I'm going to kind of tap and swirl. And there's hardly any paint on my brush. Again, very light strokes. We're just tapping and kind of swirling in some cloudy area. And you'll get a feel for this as you work some of it, into the top of your painting. But decide where you want your clouds, and our clouds are going to be different. Mine are going to be different from my sample. Yours might be slightly different from mine. But with our red, we're going to add this first layer of clouds. So it's kind of a tap and a spin motion with the brush here. And by doing that, it just gets the slightest bit of paint on the canvas. So we're going to add our first layer of clouds in that way. So go ahead and add in as many clouds as you're comfortable, and then we're going to do another layer on top of our clouds. All right, the next step in our cloud making process, we are going to do the exact same thing with some magenta paint, and we're just going to add a little variation in the cloud color. So I'm going to tap in magenta, I'm going to offload my brush, and I'm going to do the same motion mainly over the clouds, kind of in the center of my canvas. So right over those red clouds, I'm just going to tap in a little magenta, and it's a tap and swirl motion. And so wherever you want your clouds to have a little more magenta, that's what you're going to do. For the next step, I'm going to take my magenta brush, I'm going to wipe it off, and then I'm going to dip into a little bit of white. And that's going to tint the white to a nice light pink, and I'm going to do the same process again. I'm going to add some little white fluffy highlights in the clouds. It's the same motion, a little bit of tapping, a little bit of swirling, and we're just adding some highlights. And we want those light pink highlights to mostly be around the brightest area, which would be by the sun. So we're going to do the underside of the clouds, and we're going to do the lower clouds with this pink. Next step for the clouds, we are going to do the exact same motion with a little bit of violet on our brush. So mix up a nice purple or use purple from the bottle. And we're going to add this violet to the darkest clouds, which are going to be the upper clouds and the clouds on the edges of our canvas. So add a little bit of purple, same motion, tap, tap, and swirl. And just get a little bit of purple shadowing on some of those faraway clouds. All right, in the next step, where are we? Step 5-ish, maybe? We are going to mix a nice raisin colored purple. So mix some of your red with a little bit of black and a little bit of blue. If you have a violet available, you can adjust that color with a little bit of violet. But just mix your red, blue, and black together until you get a nice raisin toned, very deep purple. Once you have that color, what we're going to do is we are going to fill in the bottom half of the canvas. So everything from the waves to the bottom, and we want our darkest color to be up against where the waves are crashing. And so we're going to paint that in with a nice deep purpley blue. And then we're going to mix white as we blend downward. So once we get the color mix, we're going to paint the edge of the dark we're going to paint the dark sand along the water's edge and on the edges of the canvas. We're going to blend inward with a little titanium white, a little white, to make the sand lighter. Using the same brush in that original raisin paint color, what we're going to do is paint the shadows beneath the chairs, and we're going to add footprints in the sand. So we're going to just go back to that original purple raisin color and add a little shadow underneath those chairs. If you need to, you can add a pinch of black to darken it up, but just go ahead and blend in that shadow. And then once the shadow is complete, we're just going to add some footsteps in the sand, which are really just small dots, small marks in the sand. I decided I also wanted to add a little bit of that deep color around the edges and bottom of my canvas as well. All right, so now I'm going to use my round brush, and I'm going to mix white with a little bit of yellow. Man, this is really throwing me for a loop. I'm going to try to recover here. All right, so white with a little bit of yellow. And what we should get is just a nice lemon color. You can see that here. All right, I am going to paint some highlights on this water. So I'm going to start here, right where my sun is going to be. And I'm going to pull some of this lemon color. I'm going to start over the top of the center area because that's going to be the brightest. I'm going to pull some of this lemon right down the center and just branch it out just a little bit into the water. All right, so I'm going to pull some yellow, a little bit out, a little bit of yellow here and there, okay? And I'm going to dip right into the white. I don't need to clean off my brush because it's okay if it has a little yellow tint to it. And so mostly yellow here. Now over, as we work on these waves, this is going to be mostly white with just a little yellow tint. So I'm going to add just a little yellow here, or I'm sorry, a little white here around the edge. And then I'm going to trace that edge. And then with horizontal strokes, I'm just kind of blending that into the water. If you've got too much paint on your brush, you can offload that. So this is my lemony white, and I'm just going around the edge of that beach. Again, kind of that dry brush technique, horizontal motion. I'm just going to sweep a little bit of that white color into that ocean there. Horizontal motions, definitely dry brush. We don't want too much color. All right, I'm going to dip back into my white, and I'm going to come through and add little highlights. And I'm just going to lightly tap here and there in the water on that edge line, just little highlights. And having that pure white next to that blended white is what's going to make that look a little beachy. All right, now this has kind of some layer to it, so I'm going to take this highlight and I'm going to add kind of a little hook right there. That makes it look like there's waves rolling in, is adding kind of that little hook and going back out. That little hook and going back up. And it's just very gentle. And I'm kind of adding those wherever I see large patterns of color variation, and that gives kind of that edge along that color. And you can even add, a few little wavy highlights up here where the yellow kind of meets that orange. Where the waves are cresting. All right, now we're going to mix 1 part white with 1 part red. We're going to get some pinkish color. And I'm still using this round brush. All right, I'm going to offload a little bit. I don't want too much on there. And I'm just going to, with not very much paint on my brush, I'm going to add in just a little bit of pink around this area and kind of blend it. By now, a lot of this white and highlight has dried, so I'm just tapping in a little color and blending it outward. And this is just white, 1 part white mixed with 1 part red. as we get up here, we can add, a little more horizontal lines with it. Be cautious not to cover up your highlights. We're just kind of adding in a little bit of color, and that pink is going to blend in nicely with that purple and that orangey red that we've got going on. All right, the next thing we're going to do with the same colors, I'm going to add a little bit of magenta and a little more red. We're just going to take this color up a little more saturated. Again, we don't want too much on our paintbrush, and just at the tops, I'm just going to add a little more of that pink in there, except this is a little more vibrant because it's closer to the red and orange we've got in there. So just a little bit, adding just hints. Cleaning off my brush, and if you need to go in and really brighten up some of those white highlights, don't be afraid to do that. All right, I'm going to go back to a flat brush. I'm using a small flat, but you can use any kind of flat. And again, I'm going to dip into the white. I'm going to offload it. We're going to start adding some highlights underneath the clouds. So adding white onto this brush, and then on the undersides of these clouds, I'm just going to, same as we did earlier, kind of tap and swoosh. You can put a little, over the top. And once you kind of play with the tap and swoosh, you can see, where your highlights are going, and you can just add layers to these clouds. But adding the white over the top really makes some of these clouds come to life. So tap, and then swirl, or swoosh. Your lightest clouds are going to be the ones closest to the sun that we're going to put in there. Your darkest clouds are going to be up at the top. But know that all clouds have highlights and shadows. Oops, probably don't need that now. All right, the next thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to use the same brush, is I'm going to dip and mix some yellow and white together. If you don't have some left, I have some left over from earlier, so I don't need to get any more paint. but a nice lemon yellow. I'm going to wipe that brush off. I don't need a lot. And right around the area I'm going to add in my sun, I'm just going to add a little bit of brightness right around there. So just tapping in a little yellow. Let me lift this up. Right around that sunshine. And then I can get a nice round brush and I'm just going to make that sun white. So just filling in a white circle up here. Okay. I'm just going to add a few more white highlights right underneath that sun. That's kind of the brightest area. So right underneath that sunshine in the water, just a little bit of white. All right, so that's what I did right there. All right, and then the last thing really that we need to do is blacken these silhouettes. So again, the shape of the chair is just, we've got a line across the top and then it swoops downward. And the silhouette is just solid black. You're having trouble with that shape, if you lost some of your shape, it's really just almost like an upside down elf hat or a Santa hat is the shape that we've got there. And then once you get that basic shape in there, we're just adding right behind it, we've got, one leg right here on each chair. And what you do to one chair, you do to the other. And then we've got one leg here. This one's a little shorter because of the foreshortening. We've got two little legs in the front. And then we're painting the legs of the people. So this guy's got his little foot sticking out there and one down here. And then his head right here. And this lady's got her leg right here. And she's got a little bit of a ponytail, so her shape is a little different. And not up there. But basically we're giving the impression of two people sitting in a chair. It's just a silhouette, so it doesn't have to be perfect because they could have their arms crossed. They could have their arms out. They could be holding hands. So don't be afraid to play with that silhouette a little bit. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of black and blend it down here underneath in that shadow. I just want this shadow to be a little bit darker. And that is it. So that is our painting. As you can see, it's a little different from my sample. Anytime that I paint and then repaint, it's always slightly different. So at this point, you can do any finishing touches. I might add a little more of this dark purple, dark raisin just right around the edge there, just to darken that up. But you can make any changes you want. Of course, my sky is a little different. My highlights are a little different. But think of it like you are at the beach, right? This scene is going to constantly be changing depending on where the sun is and where the clouds move. And so everybody's is going to be just a little bit different. And that's what makes it fun and that's what makes it beautiful. So play with it, have fun with it. You can have your clouds as bright or as dark as you want. This time I definitely brightened up my clouds a little bit. I added a few more waves by the beach. I made those more apparent. So definitely play with your painting. For those of you who were here with me for the live, my biggest apologies for not having sound. If you're watching on the replay, you might ask, what am I talking about? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to download this video and I'm going to go over it with the instructions so that it is easier for you to complete this, because there definitely should have been sound from the beginning. So my biggest apologies for that. I can't wait to see what you create, so I hope you will consider sharing it with me. I have a group here on Facebook that you can join. It's facebook.com/groups/paint, rinse, repeat, and you can add your finished painting there. Or you can tag me at Paint, Rinse, Repeat or hashtag Paint, Rinse, Repeat, and I will see it there as well. But I would love for you to share your work. I'm sure it is absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me for the Couples at Sunset lesson. Can't wait to see your version. I will see you next time. Thanks everybody for hanging in with me today, and my biggest apologies about the sound. I'll see you in the next lesson. Have a great night, everyone.